All right, everyone, welcome back. Heather Hammerstedt here, emergency medicine, lifestyle medicine physician, integrative nutrition coach, and founder of Wholist, where we are specialists in the whole person. And we love to educate, coach, and consult about how our bodies and brains really work around food, movement, and sustainable health behavior change. And that is where we are digging in all week, particularly today. But already this week, we've covered metabolism basics on Tuesday. Go back and watch if you haven't. That really sets the tone for today. Come back and watch this one when you're done, or watch this and go back and kind of reframe today's based on the basics when you watch that. Yesterday, we talked about how to overcome our obstacles and reframe failure. So here is where the money is. What can actually slow down your metabolism? We're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about stress, we're going to talk about food, and we're going to talk about movement specifically. And each of these are basically like over a week of lectures in my lifestyle medicine course, and probably even more than that in our 12-week weight wellness course. And so I will try to summarize my thoughts and keep it as brief as I can, but just realize that there are a lot of layers to all this. It's very complex, but I'm going to try to summarize it for what's really important for you today in terms of figuring out if you are sabotaging yourself. So if you've ever really wondered why it feels like your metabolism is running on slow-mo, stick around. Give me some likes and loves, please, and tell me you're here in the comments so I'm not all by myself. First up, let's talk about sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. If you're not getting enough rest, it can really mess with your metabolism. Your body needs to sleep to repair and regulate everything, including how it processes food and your emotions. So here's the deal. Sleep and metabolism are very closely connected. When you don't get enough good quality sleep, it can really throw a wrench into how your metabolism works. And here's how. Mostly hormones. And we all hear about hormones. If you're going to go talk to your doctor about your hormones, just this is an expert tip. You got to know which ones you're asking about, or we're just going to be like not even know how to help you. But today we're going to be talking about specifically leptin and ghrelin, and then later we're going to talk about cortisol. So sleep helps regulate hormones that control your appetite and your metabolism. And if you're not getting enough sleep, it really messes this up. So leptin is essential for regulating hunger, energy balance, and metabolism. And while it signals the brain to reduce the appetite when fat stores are sufficient, if you have too much leptin, or if your leptin is not being recognized by your body in terms of leptin resistance, it can really disrupt that process. And that really contributes to obesity and its related metabolic disorders. So what is leptin? Leptin is a hormone that is primarily produced by the adipocytes, those fat cells that we talked about on Friday, or on Tuesday, that like hormonally active organ that we call fat or adipose tissue. So leptin is made by those cells, and what it does is it tells your brain to tell you not to eat. It's pretty cool, right? So we call it the satiety hormone or the starvation hormone. It sends signals to the hypothalamus in the brain, right up in there, indicating that the body has enough energy stored in fat and it doesn't need to consume more food. Do you remember that? So we talked about how the energy was stored by our body in our fat cells in case we need it. What's super cool is that there is a hormone in there that is feedback to your brain for your appetite. That's what leptin is. So when leptin levels are high, your appetite decreases. So by signaling that the body has enough fat stored, leptin helps maintain that energy balance, that what you're taking in and what you're burning. Super cool, right? I love our bodies. It reduces your drive to eat when the energy stores are sufficient. Makes sense, and that's important, right? So poor sleep decreases the levels of leptin. Lower leptin levels mean that the signal to the brain indicating that the body is full is weakened. So as a result, the body probably is interpreting this as a need for more food, leading to increased hunger and cravings, usually like the high calorie, non-nutritious kind of cravings. And with reduced leptin, the brain doesn't get that stop eating signal very effectively. So we're leading to overeating and not just more eating, but overeating, if that makes sense. So leptin also works in energy regulation and metabolism. So it helps control how much fat is stored in the body by influencing both appetite and energy expenditure. High leptin levels promote the burning of fat as well as reducing the urge to eat. So win-win. And lower leptin levels may decrease your energy expenditure, which means that if you have those lower levels because of poor sleep or other reasons, your body is ratcheting down that thermostat, making the body more efficient at storing fat because it thinks you need more energy rather than burning it. Does that make sense? So slows your metabolism down, makes it more difficult to maintain or lose weight. Leptin also plays a role in thermogenesis, which is generation of heat. So that helps regulates the amount of the energy that you're burning even at rest, so that basal metabolic rate. So again, not only is it telling your brain not to eat and burning more energy as it goes, it's helping generate heat in order to do that. We can also, it also influences reproductive function, which means menstrual cycles and fertility are off. It regulates the immune system, helping modulate kind of your immune response during times of energy deficiency. So those are all very important pieces as well. But really what I want to talk about today mostly is the poor sleep, decreased leptin, increased hunger, cravings, and fat storage. So I won't get into this here, but that's the main event, so to speak. But obesity causes a leptin issue as well, leptin resistance, which means your body doesn't respond to the leptin in the ways that it should. So it sees low leptin even though it has too much. So it's essentially the same problem. So does that make sense? Let me know in the comments if you have some questions about leptin. Okay, ghrelin is, which sounds like it should be like in a Harry Potter movie or something, but ghrelin is the opposite of leptin. Ghrelin is a hormone that is primarily produced in the stomach and the small intestine. Leptin was made in those adipocytes in your fat cells. Ghrelin is often referred to as the hunger hormone because it does the opposite of leptin, and it stimulates your appetite, increases your food intake, and promotes fat storage. So ghrelin levels typically rise before meals when you're hungry and decrease after eating. But when you don't get enough sleep, again, the ghrelin levels increase just as leptin decreased. So they're working opposite, but like they're working in a party. So the rise in ghrelin intensifies hunger, making you feel hungrier than you would after a good night's sleep. So elevated ghrelin levels are also associated, similar to low leptin levels, with cravings for high-calorie, carbohydrate-rich foods, which can lead to overeating and weight gain. So the combination of this, increased ghrelin, promoting hunger, and decreased leptin, which reduces satiety during sleep deprivation, can really lead to significant overeating, weight gain, and increased risk of obesity. High ghrelin also promotes that fat storage, specifically around the abdominal area, and that's kind of when the fat is around there, that is what's contributing to metabolic disorders like insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. So this hormonal imbalance is really what we're talking about when it comes to hormone dysregulation from decreased sleep. So does that make you want to get some rest? Stress is another big one. So this is number 2. We talked about sleep. We're going to talk about stress now. When you're stressed out, your body releases a hormone called cortisol, which can mess with your metabolism and lead to weight gain as well. So finding a way to manage your stress is super important. Again, tomorrow we're going to talk about tips I have on how to actually implement this information and rev up your metabolism. But for now, we're talking about what the problem actually is. So cortisol is a steroid hormone. It's produced in the adrenal glands, which sort of like sit on top of you can't really see me, sit on top of your kidneys over here. And that cortisol plays a crucial role in a lot of bodily functions, particularly in response to stress. So we call it the stress hormone. We talked about our hunger hormone and our satiety hormone. This is a stress hormone, helps your body respond to stressful situations. So when you face a threat, cortisol levels rise to give you the energy and the focus that you need to like short-term deal with that challenge, right? That's part of the fight or flight response. Cortisol also plays a role in energy regulation and metabolism by influencing how the body uses fats, proteins, and carbohydrates, right? So if it needs to increase your energy and needs to increase your focus, it's got to use those macronutrients from the food to efficiently help you do that. Make sure you have enough energy during that stress event. It's also an anti-inflammatory. It influences mood, motivation, and fear, memory formation, blood pressure, immune system, and our circadian rhythm. So cortisol, super, super important. So you can imagine it's great for short-term stress responses, right? Running from that proverbial bear, solving a situation at work, protecting your kid, running a race, right? But ongoing chronic stress, so chronically poor sleep, chronic mental or emotional angst, work, social media, the news, life in 2020, right? 2020s, I should say, leading to kind of ongoing chronically elevated cortisol levels. That's a whole other thing together. So poor sleep, like we talked about, causes our body to perceive stress and increased cortisol. Increased stress and anxiety, impaired memory and cognition, that's short and long-term cognition for those of you who are afraid of dementia, as I am. In terms of metabolic issues, high cortisol can increase your appetite, again, particularly for those high-calorie, non-nutritious, carbohydrate-filled foods. This is because cortisol can stimulate the release of insulin, which can lead to cravings and fat storage, particularly, again, in that high-risk abdominal area where we really start worrying about metabolic problems. High cortisol can make you feel hungrier. It thinks you need more food, more high-calorie food, because it wants you to basically like carb load to run away from that bear, right? So does that make sense? So the chronic elevation of cortisol, whether that's from chronic stress, from everything that's going on in the world and the access that we have to it, whether it's things that are going on with work or family or poor sleep, really causes insulin resistance, the blood sugar issues, and the risk of type 2 diabetes. So turning down your metabolism and really making it harder for your body to recover and regulate hunger hormones. I really do think that cortisol, again, is super important for us to be able to ratchet it up and ratchet it down. Again, it's this chronically elevated level that I'm talking about. And again, this is something that you can test with your doctor if you know what you're asking for. Stress on its own can also affect your digestive system. So you can imagine if you're running from the bear, your body doesn't really want to think about digesting, right? If you're chronically under stress, your body is not going to want to think about digestion because it's on that fight or flight sympathetic response. So it's going to slow down your digestion. It's going to cause GI issues, can interfere with nutrient absorption. So even if you're eating really well, those whole foods with all the right balance of macronutrients and micronutrients that we want, you may not be absorbing them. And then with the elevated cortisol, you're not metabolizing them and getting the right energy stores out of them. I won't get into the immunosuppressive and cardiovascular risks of elevated cortisol because that's not why we're here today. But let's just say get some rest, work on your mindfulness, work on your stress relief, figuring out whether you need therapy or a support group to be able to work through that stress and bring that cortisol level down. It's not only going to keep your hunger hormones balanced, your insulin resistance down, your body slimmer, and your energy metabolism working correctly, but you're going to be less susceptible to infections and illnesses, less at risk for long-term cognitive issues, and lower risk of heart disease and other vascular issues like stroke. So did I mention work on your mindfulness and stress reduction and go to sleep? The Netflix doesn't help with that with the automatic replay, like next episode, right? So we're all working on that. All right, a few other things. We're going to talk about food, number 3, movement, number 4, and we're out of here. All right, so food. If you're already following along with me, which you are if you're watching, you know that highly processed and ultra-processed foods are what you need to avoid in terms of learning to fuel your body appropriately and meeting your mind-body goals. These are not food, but food products that the food science peeps make in the labs and test to see how addictive it is, what right fat, salt, sugar combo is just so that you will keep buying that box, bag, and can of product. So those are what pack on non-nutritious calories that your body doesn't really know what to do with. Whole foods, actual food that are grown or born are what you should aim for. It's all about balance and getting those good for you nutrients. This is key for what we're going to talk about on Friday and Saturday. It's not always quantity that matters when it comes to metabolism. It's often quality. This is why the myth of calories in and calories out is just that, a myth. It is way too simplified, as you can tell just from Tuesday and today. But what you eat isn't the only issue with food and metabolism. If you don't eat enough, your body is going to ratchet down its perceived energy needs. Remember, we talked about this on Tuesday. The metabolism is like an engine, and it's dependent on the fuel that it gets. So the quality of the fuel is what I just talked about with the whole unprocessed food versus processed food product. The quantity of the fuel is what we're talking about here. I said it's like an engine, but it's also like a thermostat, our metabolism. It's way smarter than us. And it senses and guesses how much energy it has right then or might have coming, and it ratchets down your basic metabolic rate, your resting metabolic rate. Remember that neat energy production we talked about? Basically, it thinks it might not or doesn't have enough fuel for the engine for all of its basic cellular processes that it's doing. And so it tells the engine to work its things with less. And that doesn't necessarily mean more efficiently. It just means your body's underlying basal needs may not be being met with the energy that they deserve. It's slowing down your cellular processes. Now that isn't a good thing. So eating less calories in doesn't mean your body will necessarily lose weight, because it just changes the number of calories it burns to equal what's coming in. Does that make sense? So quality and quantity of food is important. Now you're going to ask me about intermittent fasting, and if you want me to talk for another 3 days, I can. But I'll give you a clue as to intermittent fasting success. It's not eating less. It's changing the eating time windows. If you're just fasting and not eating enough in the window, you're basically just calorie restricting and slowing down your metabolism, putting yourself into like starvation mode. So there is a way to intermittently fast successfully and healthily. Healthily is not a word. But again, too much to talk about here. It's another like hour plus lecture. So give me some love on here, people, that you're listening and you're loving this and you're taking some things off. Tell me in the comments anything that you want to hear about, and I can fill in the comments afterwards for you. Number 4, this is our last topic in terms of what you may be doing to sabotage your metabolism, and that is movement. There are certain things that you are doing with exercise that might be slowing your metabolism down as well. And most of that is overdoing your cardiovascular fitness. Now, while cardio is great for fitness, it is great for your cardiovascular system. That's why we call it that. It is great for a lot of things, but doing it without the right balance of strength training particularly, or doing too much of cardio, can actually slow your metabolism down. So balance is key. Now, this was a big one for me and continues to be a habit that I am trying to balance. I've always been a cardio person. I was a soccer player through college, and like many of you, I've been told my whole life that calories in, calories out was the key. So what is the most efficient way of seeing like calories out? Like running on a treadmill, right? Or doing the elliptical machine. It's like you can see the number of bagels or soda cans or pretzels or wine glasses that you were like earning, right? Wrong. As you learned from your basics on Tuesday in our conversation, the beginning of this about our thermostat and our engine, it just isn't that simple. Overdoing cardio can potentially decrease metabolism for several reasons. Primarily due to muscle loss, hormonal imbalances, and the body's adaptive response to prolonged endurance exercise. I'm not saying you shouldn't run that marathon. I'm not saying you shouldn't do your cardiovascular 150 minutes per week. What I'm saying is that you need to balance it, and this is why. Excessive cardio, especially combined with a calorie deficit, so not eating enough, can lead your muscle catabolism, which means that your body is breaking down muscle tissue to get energy. Since muscle tissue is more metabolically active than fat, meaning it uses more energy at baseline than fat, we're going to talk about that in a second, then losing muscle can lead to a decrease in your resting metabolic rate, which means you don't need as much over time. So this is counterproductive, right? You're burning less when you're doing nothing. It also, intense and prolonged cardio can elevate your cortisol levels. We're going to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about the perimenopausal state on Saturday. But remember, cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. We talked about it earlier at length, but as a reminder, chronically high cortisol can also lead to muscle breakdown, fat storage in the abdominal area, and decreased thyroid function, all of which can lower metabolic rate. And then lastly, cardio can cause metabolic adaptation, which basically means that the body adapts to prolonged excessive cardio by becoming more efficient, which when you're training for something is amazing, right? Like it's easier to run your 4 miles. It's easier to run your 6 miles. It's easier to run your training for your marathon, whatever that is. That's great. But it also means that by becoming more efficient, it's burning fewer calories for the same amount of exercise. And that, again, is a positive in some ways, but if it's not balanced, it can lead to a plateau in weight loss because of this adaptive thermogenesis. It can even cause weight gain despite high levels of cardiovascular fitness. So when your body perceives a high energy demand with insufficient recovery, in addition, it's going to slow down other things to conserve the energy to recover and, again, reduce your metabolism. So summary is, while cardio is beneficial for cardiovascular health and calorie burning, overdoing it can really lead to muscle loss, hormonal imbalances, metabolic slowdown. So to maintain a healthy metabolism, it's really important to balance cardio with strength training, proper nutrition, and adequate recovery. So it's not just getting the exercise in because it's time to get exercise. You really have to plan this, especially as you age. Again, Saturday's conversation. So keep in mind, muscle burns more calories than fat at baseline, even when you're just sitting around. So if you're not including strength training in your routine, it might be slowing down your metabolism because you don't have as much muscle that's sitting here burning. What is it? I think it's 6 to 9 calories at the same time that your fat is only burning 2 to 3 calories. And so really is a significant difference in terms of what you're packing around on your body. So we're going to talk more about this tomorrow in our metabolic boosters training. So stick around for that tomorrow. That's about it for me today. I hope you found it useful. Tuesday's training on metabolic basics and today's on metabolic downers are full of tons of information. You might have to watch them a few times. I would suggest going back to Tuesday and watching now again that you've heard this. It'll give you a different frame to digest. And yes, my pun is intended. All of this. So what takeaways do you have from today? What questions? What can I clarify? Let me know in the comments. Again, I'm Heather Hammerstead, emergency medicine, lifestyle medicine, integrative nutrition coach. I've been physicianing for 20 years. I've been health coaching, doing this health coaching thing now for 20 years. It's not a side gig or a fad for me. If you want real information, real healing, and real sustainable change in your lifestyle to get to that body and mind that you desire, and you like nerdiness, I'm your person, and our community here at Wholist is your people. We offer personal and group coaching in partnerships with clinics. More to come with that on tomorrow and Saturday. So tomorrow around 3 p.m. Mountain Time, we're going to do metabolic boosters, how to take all this information we got this week and implement tips and tricks around food, sleep, stress, and movement to really rev up your metabolism to fire. And I'll have an announcement about how you're watching these trainings will get you a deal on an offer to work with us. Saturday, aging. Unfortunately, as we age, our metabolism naturally slows down, but don't worry, staying active and eating right can really help you counteract this. We'll talk about specifics around perimenopause and what our hormonal shifts are doing to what always used to work for me and what we can do about it. And I'll have an announcement about our clinic partnerships. If you're a physician or a provider, I have a steal for you to serve your patients even better and more efficiently when it comes to lifestyle changes and weight management. So I'll see you then. Cheers.